On my 60th birthday, my daughter said she was working late, but I saw her calling my ex's wife Mom at a party I was never invited to. I've always been a simple woman, born and raised in a small Vermont town where everyone knew your business before you did. I grew up believing in two things: love and family. My name is Laura Collins, and at 25, I married the only man I'd ever loved, Richard Bennett. He was everything a young woman could want: handsome with those piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through you, charming with words that flowed like honey, and just mysterious enough to keep me intrigued. When we said our vows, I truly believed we were writing the beginning of a perfect love story. After the wedding, we moved to Boston, a fresh start in a city where possibilities seemed endless. Our first apartment wasn't much, but we filled it with dreams and promises. Richard's career in finance was taking off, and I supported him every step of the way. I still remember how he'd come home with that boyish smile after closing a big deal, swing me around the kitchen and whisper, "We're going places. Laura, just you wait." For the first 5 years, Richard was the husband I'd always imagined. Sure, he worked late sometimes, building our future, he'd say, but I never questioned it. When I gave birth to our daughter Emily in our 4th year of marriage, his eyes welled up with tears as he held her tiny body. "She's perfect," he whispered. I thought our family was complete. But something changed after Emily turned 2. Richard started coming home later, sometimes smelling of perfume that wasn't mine. His phone would ring at odd hours, and he'd step outside to take calls from business associates. I found lipstick on his collar once, classic, I know, but when I confronted him, he laughed it off. "It's from Janet at the office." She hugged me after we landed the Henderson account. I chose to believe him. Maybe that makes me a fool, but I wanted to preserve what we had. For Emily, for the family I'd always dreamed of. So I smiled through the doubt, cooked his favorite meals, and pretended not to notice when he'd come home at 3 a.m. with weak excuses. Then came that rainy Tuesday. 10 years into our marriage, I was 35. Emily was 6, and I thought we'd weathered the storm. Richard sat me down at our dining table, his face unnervingly calm. "I've met someone else," he said as casually as if he were discussing the weather. "Her name is Clara Morgan." The name meant nothing to me. Turned out she was the widow of Richard's colleague. Her husband had died in a car accident just last year, leaving her with 2 children, Jason, 7, and Samantha, 5. I was just helping her out at first. Richard explained, his voice eerily reasonable. "You know, with finances, fixing things around her house." But then it became something more. I remember staring at the grain of our oak dining table, tracing the lines with my eyes as my world collapsed. "How long?" I asked. "8 months," he replied. "But Laura, you have to understand, these kids need a father figure." Before I could process everything, he'd already moved most of his clothes out. And then, just 3 days later, came the ultimate betrayal. It was pouring rain when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Richard standing there with Clara, a polished blonde with calculating eyes, and her 2 children. The kids looked confused, but Clara's hand was firmly clasped in Richard's, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she squeezed his fingers. "Laura," Richard said with shocking composure, "Jason and Samantha need a real father, and you're too rigid to understand that I've made my choice." I stood frozen as Clara's eyes swept over me with smug triumph. The children looked at me as if I was the intruder in their family, not the other way around. But what broke me was what happened next. Emily, hearing her father's voice, came running from her room. Her little face lit up before crumpling in confusion at the sight of these strangers. She grabbed Richard's leg, her small voice breaking as she begged, "Daddy, don't leave me and Mommy. Please don't go." Richard gently pried her fingers loose, patted her head once, and turned away. No explanation, no proper goodbye. He simply walked back to the car, his new ready-made family in tow, while Emily collapsed in tears on our doorstep. I didn't cry. Not then. I held my sobbing daughter and watched the taillights disappear around the corner. The divorce papers arrived 3 days later. My lawyer was ruthless. Richard's infidelity meant I got the house, and a substantial settlement. Blood money, I called it. After finalizing the divorce, I legally changed Emily's surname to Collins. My name. My family. We moved to the suburbs of Boston, somewhere quiet where we could heal without gossip following us. I made a vow that night as I tucked Emily into bed. No man would ever hurt either of us again. I would be mother and father both. I threw myself into my career, invested wisely, and built financial security for Emily's future. We developed routines, found new normal, created a life that was just ours. But there were nights I couldn't sleep, haunted by the look Clara gave me before they left, that knowing smirk that seemed to say, "Your daughter will come back to her real family eventually." 5 years passed. Emily and I had built a good life together, just the two of us. She was 11 now, starting to bloom into her own person. I thought we'd put the past behind us. Then one evening, flipping through a local newspaper, I saw them, Richard and Clara, at some charity gala, looking polished and perfect. But what made my blood run cold was the figure partially visible in the background, standing among a group of children. It was Emily, my Emily. Why was she there? How long had this been going on behind my back? What connection was being silently reforged while I remained oblivious? I gripped the newspaper so tightly it tore, the questions spinning through my mind like a gathering storm. That newspaper discovery shook me, but I convinced myself it must have been a coincidence. Maybe Emily had been on a school trip that happened to visit the same venue. I never confronted her about it. Perhaps out of fear of what I might learn. The next 20 years passed in a blur of school projects, college applications, and quiet birthday celebrations. I devoted every waking moment to giving Emily the stability she deserved. We built a good life together, just the two of us against the world. I worked my way up at the investment firm, eventually becoming a senior financial advisor. The money was good, and I made sure Emily never wanted for anything. When Emily got accepted to a prestigious business school in New York to study accounting, I couldn't have been prouder. She'd grown into a determined, independent young woman with a sharp mind for numbers, like me, not like him. But I noticed how she'd sometimes go quiet when father-daughter dances were mentioned, or how her eyes would linger on old family photos I'd forgotten to put away. "Do you ever miss him?" I asked once when she was home during a college break. Emily shook her head firmly. "You're everything to me, Mom. You always have been." But there was something in her voice I couldn't quite place. At 26, Emily brought home a man named Brian Foster, clean-cut, soft-spoken, with steady work in IT, and a seemingly genuine smile. She was clearly smitten, her face lighting up whenever he spoke. But alarm bells rang in my head. Hadn't I worn that same expression for Richard? "He's the one, Mom," she said, squeezing my hand. "He's nothing like Dad. Nothing." The fact that she even made the comparison unsettled me. I did what any protective mother with resources would do. I hired a private investigator. The report came back clean. No criminal record, no previous marriages, no secret children, decent credit score. Still, I couldn't shake my unease as I reluctantly agreed to a simple wedding in New York. A year later, Emily gave birth to Lily, my beautiful granddaughter with curious eyes and a smile that could melt glaciers. With both Emily and Brian climbing their respective career ladders, I offered to move in and help with the baby. Just temporarily. I said that temporary arrangement stretched into years. I slipped easily into the role of the supportive grandmother, babysitting Lily, preparing meals, even handling most household expenses. When Brian's job-hopping tendencies left their finances strained, I never complained. This was my chance to ensure Emily had the family stability I couldn't maintain for her as a child. But as Lily turned 3, I began noticing troubling patterns. Emily started going out frequently on weekends, always meeting clients, but dressed far too elegantly for business meetings. Her makeup would be flawless, her outfit carefully selected, her perfume expensive and heavy. Another client meeting. I asked one Saturday as she slipped on heels that were definitely not business appropriate. These high-profile accounts expect a certain image. Mom, she'd reply, avoiding my eyes. Don't wait up. One afternoon while Emily was at work, I was putting away her dry cleaning when a photograph slipped from her purse. My heart froze as I recognized Richard and Clara standing together at some formal event, looking older but still painfully familiar. On the back, written in delicate script, "Family is forever. C.M." When Emily returned that evening, I held up the photo, care to explain this. She barely glanced at it, waving dismissively. "Oh, a coworker gave me that. Just for fun, Mom. Nothing important." But I saw the flash of something in her eyes. Guilt, secrecy? I couldn't tell, but it haunted me. As my 60th birthday approached, Emily suddenly announced she wanted to throw me a big celebration. "You've done so much for us, Mom. Let me show you how grateful I am." She insisted, uncharacteristically enthusiastic about party planning. "It'll be a day you'll never forget." Brian nodded along but wouldn't meet my gaze when they discussed the details. Something felt off. Emily had never been one for grand gestures or elaborate events. Why start now? The night before my birthday, I was awakened by the sound of Emily's hushed voice from the hallway. Thinking she might be dealing with a work emergency, I moved closer to my bedroom door to check if everything was okay. "Mom, don't worry," she whispered into her phone. "Everything is set for tomorrow. She won't suspect a thing." I froze my hand on the doorknob. Mom. Who was Emily calling Mom in the middle of the night? "I promise it'll all work out," she continued. "Yes, I know what I'm doing." I crept back to bed, my mind racing for hours. I stared at the ceiling, my heart pounding against my ribs like it wanted to escape. "Mom, don't worry." The words echoed in my head until dawn broke. Who was Emily reassuring, and what exactly was waiting for me behind the perfect facade of tomorrow's celebration? I barely slept that night. Emily's whispered conversation replaying in my mind like a broken record. By the time morning sunlight filtered through my curtains, I'd convinced myself I was overreacting. Maybe she was talking to a party planner or a friend helping with my birthday surprise. I got up early as usual and started preparing breakfast, blueberry pancakes my specialty. Despite my unease, a tiny part of me was excited about whatever celebration Emily had planned. 60 years old. How had that happened so quickly? Emily appeared in the kitchen wearing a crisp navy business suit, her hair pulled back in a professional bun. Brian followed close behind, checking his watch. "Mom, I'm so sorry," Emily said, grabbing a travel mug for coffee. "We just got called into the office for an emergency project meeting. Some client disaster needs immediate attention." On a Saturday, I asked the pancake batter dripping from my spatula. "Fortune 500 clients don't care about weekends," Brian added, adjusting his tie. "But we'll be back by early afternoon, promise. We'll celebrate then." I noticed Lily sitting quietly at the table, already dressed in a pretty outfit that wasn't her usual Saturday morning pajamas. "What about Lily?" I asked. "My friend Sophie is picking her up," Emily replied, checking her phone. "She'll take Lily to the Children's Museum. They should be here any minute." Sophie. In all the years I'd lived with them, I'd never heard Emily mention anyone named Sophie. "Is she a new friend?" I asked casually. "Oh, we've known each other for ages," Emily said, not meeting my eyes. "She's been wanting to spend time with Lily." Before I could ask more questions, the doorbell rang. Emily rushed to answer it, speaking in hushed tones with whoever was outside. I only caught glimpses of a woman with blonde hair before Emily hurried Lily out the door with a quick, "Bye, Mom. See you this afternoon." And just like that, my birthday morning emptied of family. I spent the day trying to keep busy dusting shelves that didn't need dusting, rearranging books, preparing a few simple dishes for what I still hoped would be an evening celebration. Every few minutes, I checked my phone expecting updates or at least birthday wishes. By mid-afternoon, the house remained painfully quiet. I finally decided to call Emily, but just as I picked up my phone, a text message appeared. "Sorry, Mom. Emergency meeting. Running long, client crisis, worse than expected. Can we postpone celebration until tomorrow? Love you." I swallowed my disappointment and texted back a cheerful, "Of course," with a heart emoji. Work emergencies happened. I understood responsibility. After all, I'd raised Emily to take her career seriously. But as the hours dragged on with no further communication, loneliness settled over me like a heavy blanket. I couldn't bear the thought of my 60th birthday, passing with nothing to mark it. So I went online and ordered a small cake from a local bakery that offered same-day delivery. While waiting for the cake, I scrolled through social media to distract myself. I rarely used these platforms, but Emily had insisted I create accounts to stay connected. I absently clicked through local news and community posts when a recently uploaded video caught my eye. Elegant family celebration at Grandview Hotel. Read the caption posted just 27 minutes ago. I clicked play out of idle curiosity, and my world imploded. There was my daughter Emily dressed in an elegant black cocktail dress I'd never seen before, not business attire at all. Beside her stood Brian in a sharp suit looking relaxed and happy. Lily twirled in a frilly pink dress, her hair done up with ribbons. They were laughing together in a lavishly decorated banquet room, crystal chandeliers sparkling above them. The camera panned right, and I felt the air leave my lungs. Richard, my ex-husband, stood arm in arm with Clara Morgan. Despite 20 years of aging, I'd recognize them anywhere. Richard's hair had gone silver, but his smile remained the same. Clara looked expensively maintained diamonds glittering at her neck and wrists. Next to them stood two young adults who must be Jason and Samantha, all grown up and elegantly dressed for the occasion. And there, prominently displayed on a central table, was an elaborate three-tiered cake with "Happy Birthday, Clara" written in elegant script. My fingers trembled as I turned up the volume just in time to hear my daughter, my Emily, wrap Clara in a warm embrace and say clearly, "Happy birthday, Mom." Mom. She called Clara Mom. I played the video again and again, hoping I'd misheard that somehow this was all a terrible misunderstanding, but with each replay, the truth became clearer. The secret weekend, business meetings, the mysterious phone calls, the photograph I'd found, all of it led to this moment of absolute betrayal. I set down my phone, tears streaming silently down my face. Not because I was alone on my birthday. I'd had solitary birthdays before, but because I realized that everything I thought I knew about my relationship with my daughter had been a carefully constructed lie. The doorbell rang. My birthday cake had arrived. I accepted the small box from the delivery person with numb hands, comparing it to the extravagant creation I'd just seen in the video. Mine was a simple vanilla cake with "Happy 60th" written in basic frosting. No elaborate decorations, no loving family gathered around. I placed a single candle in the center and lit it, going through the motions of a birthday ritual. I closed my eyes to make a wish, as I had every year since childhood, but this year I couldn't find anything to wish for. The family I'd sacrificed everything for didn't exist. That night, I watched the video one last time before trying to sleep. Something caught my eye that I hadn't noticed before. Just before the clip ended, Clara looked directly at the camera with a knowing smile and gave a small, deliberate nod as if acknowledging someone behind the lens. A chill ran through me. This wasn't just a random video that happened to be uploaded where I could find it. This was intentional. A message meant for me to see. I lay awake in the dark, wondering, was this video a weapon deliberately aimed at my heart on my birthday? And if so, what else did Clara have planned? I didn't call or text Emily after watching that video. What would be the point? Instead, I sat in our dimly lit living room, the small birthday cake still on the coffee table waiting. I wanted to see what story they'd tell when they finally came home, how they'd maintain this charade to my face. The wall clock ticked past 11 p.m. Then midnight. I remained perfectly still like a sentinel even as my back ached from sitting upright for so long. At nearly 1 a.m. I heard keys jangling in the lock. The front door swung open and Emily walked in, her makeup still flawless, but her shoulders dramatically slumped in feigned exhaustion. Brian followed, loosening his tie with an exaggerated sigh. Lily trailed behind them, eyes heavy with genuine sleepiness. "Mom, you're still up," Emily said, forcing a yawn. "Sorry we're so late. That client emergency was a nightmare." "Absolute disaster," Brian added, shaking his head. "We had to rebuild the entire presentation from scratch." Emily set down her purse and gave me a practiced apologetic smile. "We'll make it up to you tomorrow. Mom, I promise we'll have the most amazing celebration." I said nothing, just gestured toward my small birthday cake sitting untouched on the coffee table. Emily glanced at it, her expression faltering for just a second. "Oh, Mom, you shouldn't have bothered. Did you get that for yourself?" "Aren't you going to have some?" I asked quietly. Emily and Brian exchanged a quick look. "We already ate," Brian said hurriedly. "The client ordered dinner for everyone at the office. Really nice spread." "I bet it was," I replied, reaching for my phone. With deliberate slowness, I pulled up the video and turned the screen toward them. Almost as nice as the spread at Clara's birthday party at the Grandview Hotel. The color drained from Emily's face. Brian froze mid-movement. Only Lily, in her innocence, broke the silence. "That's Grandma Clara's birthday cake," she exclaimed, pointing at the screen. It had flowers made of sugar on it. Emily's mask of exhaustion vanished, replaced by something harder, colder. She straightened her shoulders and met my gaze without flinching. "Mom, it's time you learned to forgive and move on," she said evenly. "Clara has been good to me. She treats me like her own daughter." "And what am I to you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Emily's laugh was brittle. "You've been stuck in the past for 20 years. I needed a real family, not just a bitter woman who can't let go." Something inside me, something that had been bending for years, finally snapped. Before I knew what I was doing, my hand connected with Emily's cheek in a sharp slap. It was the first time I'd ever struck her in her entire life. Brian immediately pulled Emily behind him, glaring at me. "You need to control yourself," he said coldly. "We've put up with your issues long enough." "Grandma's being scary," Lily whispered, clutching her father's leg. "Grandma Clara says she gets angry a lot." That innocent comment was the final dagger to my heart. They'd been poisoning even my granddaughter against me. Emily rubbed her cheek, eyes narrowed. "See, this is exactly why I needed Clara. She understands what family means. Family." I echoed hollowly. "I gave up everything for you. 20 years of my life devoted to making sure you had everything you needed." "No, you controlled everything," Emily shot back. "Clara gives without expecting anything in return." I couldn't bear to look at them anymore. Without another word, I walked to my bedroom and closed the door behind me, but the thin walls couldn't block out their conversation as they moved to the kitchen. "She's becoming impossible," Emily hissed, "controlling everything, judging everyone. We'd be so much better off without her." Brian agreed. She's holding us back. Clara was right. Emily continued. We need to start making decisions without consulting her. I lay in bed, tears silently tracking down my face. All those years of sacrifice, the midnight feedings, the college tuition payments, the babysitting, the financial support meant nothing to them. I was just an inconvenience now, a bitter old woman to be tolerated. Sleep never came. Instead, I quietly packed a suitcase gathering only essentials. Then I retrieved my important documents from the hidden safe in my closet: property deeds, investment accounts, insurance policies, all in my name. Things Emily and Brian knew nothing about. I'd always kept certain financial matters private, a habit from my days after Richard left. Thank God for that foresight. I wrote a brief note on a slip of paper. I'm gone, don't look for me. As dawn broke, I wheeled my suitcase to the front door. Emily's phone lay forgotten on the living room sofa, its screen still illuminated. A notification caught my eye. A text message from a contact saved as Clara Mom. Is it done? Don't forget what I promised you. My blood ran cold. What else were Emily and Clara plotting behind my back? What promises had been made? As I stepped out into the cool morning air, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something even darker at play, something I hadn't yet discovered. I drove through the night, my headlights cutting through darkness as I put miles between myself and the life I'd known. By dawn, I was crossing into Maine, exhaustion settling into my bones, but determination keeping me alert. My destination was a small coastal property in Portland that I'd purchased years ago after my divorce from Richard, a secret insurance policy that nobody in my family knew existed. The cottage wasn't much, just 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, and a living area with windows facing the Atlantic. I'd bought it with part of my divorce settlement, telling myself it was a smart investment. In reality, some deep instinct had prompted me to create this escape hatch, as if I'd always known another betrayal might come. As I unlocked the door and wheeled my suitcase inside, the musty smell of disuse greeted me. But beneath it was something else: possibility. For the first time in decades, I was answerable to no one, no grandchildren to babysit, no meals to prepare for ungrateful adults, no pretense to maintain. Just me, Laura Collins, finally belonging to herself. I spent that first day airing out the cottage, making up the bed with fresh linens I'd purchased at a nearby store, and sitting on the small deck watching waves crash against rocky shores. My phone buzzed repeatedly, Emily's name flashing on the screen. Then Brian's. After the 12th call, I blocked both their numbers. Whatever crisis my disappearance had caused was their problem now, not mine. The first morning I woke in my new home, I was startled by the silence. No. Mom, can you watch Lily while I shower? No sounds of cartoons blaring from the living room, just the gentle rhythm of waves and distant seagulls. I made a single cup of coffee just for me and watched the sunrise paint the water gold. Such a simple pleasure, yet one I'd denied myself for years. I found myself developing new routines: morning walks along the shore, afternoons reading books I'd always meant to get to evenings, cooking simple meals that pleased only my palate. My life had shrunk in some ways, but expanded immeasurably in others. After 2 weeks of this peaceful solitude, I made a bold decision. I booked a spot on a month-long guided tour of the eastern seaboard. At 60 years old, I was finally taking a real vacation without having to consult anyone else's schedule or preferences. The tour group consisted mostly of retirees and a few younger solo travelers. Among them was Deborah Mitchell, a sharp-witted woman of 58, with silver-streaked dark hair and knowing eyes. We gravitated toward each other naturally, and over dinner one night, she shared her story. My son and his wife moved in with me after he lost his job. She explained. Temporary, they said. 3 years later, they drained my retirement account, taken out a second mortgage on my house that I co-signed just to help them get back on their feet, and then disappeared to Florida when the bills came due. I told her my story in return, and a friendship was born from our shared experience of familial betrayal. We became travel companions, often wandering off from the main group to explore on our own. 3 weeks into the tour, we stopped in Boston for 2 days. I hesitated about returning to the city but decided I wasn't going to let fear rule me anymore. Deborah and I were shopping at a high-end mall when fate dealt its hand. Turning a corner near the food court, I came face to face with Richard and Clara. Clara spotted me first. She looked expensively maintained designer dress, perfectly styled hair, diamond earrings catching the light. Her eyes widened in recognition before narrowing with contempt. "Well, look who it is," she announced loudly, her voice carrying. "Laura, you're still alive. I assumed you were withering away in some nursing home waiting for family visits that never come." Richard stood slightly behind her, his eyes darting away when they met mine. Even after all these years, he couldn't hold my gaze. 20 years ago, I might have shrunk away. 10 years ago, I might have pretended not to see them, but this new version of me, Laura Collins, answerable only to herself, smiled coolly. At least I'm not spending my golden years playing homemaker to someone else's husband. I replied, my voice steady. "Tell me, Clara, does it bother you, knowing you'll always be the replacement wife?" People nearby started glancing our way. Clara's face flushed with anger. "You have nothing," she hissed, "just the title of abandoned birth mother. And you have a man who abandoned his own child." I shot back. "What kind of father does that make him? What kind of mother does that make you, encouraging him to desert his daughter?" The crowd around us had grown quiet openly, eavesdropping now. I felt oddly powerful, no longer the victim of their story. Then I heard a familiar voice. "Mom." Emily stood a few feet away, shopping bags in hand, her expression a mixture of shock and anger. For a split second, I thought she might stand with me, might finally see Clara and Richard for what they were. Instead, she rushed to Clara's side. "Mom, are you okay?" she asked her, not me. Then Emily turned to me, eyes cold. "You're always living in the past, full of hatred. No wonder Dad chose someone else." The last thread of maternal love I'd been clinging to snapped clean. Without thinking, I stepped forward and slapped Emily for the second time in her life, this time in front of a crowd of strangers. The sharp crack echoed in the sudden silence. Emily's hand flew to her cheek, her eyes wide with shock. I looked directly into her eyes, my voice steady. "From this moment on, you are no longer my daughter." Then I turned and walked away, Deborah at my side, leaving them in a bubble of awkward silence and whispers. Later that evening, back at our hotel, Deborah showed me her phone. "You should see this," she said quietly. It was a social media post made just minutes earlier. Emily stood with her arm around Clara's shoulders, both women smiling triumphantly at the camera. The caption read, "This is what real family looks like." I handed the phone back to Deborah, my jaw tight with controlled anger. But beneath my rage lurked a troubling question. What else were Emily and Clara planning together? This public display felt deliberate, calculated, like a move in a game I didn't yet understand. Life settled into a peaceful rhythm in Portland. Deborah visited often, and I began taking pottery classes at a local community center. For the first time in decades, I was living entirely for myself. 2 months after my confrontation with Emily at the mall, my phone rang with a video call from an unexpected source, Zoe Parker, my former busybody neighbor from New York. I nearly declined the call, but curiosity got the better of me. Zoe's face appeared on screen, practically glowing with excitement. Her eyes were wide. Her smile barely contained the universal expression of someone bursting with gossip. "Laura, thank goodness you answered. You won't believe what happened." She paused dramatically, then blurted out, "Emily's house burned down. Don't worry, nobody died but your daughter's perfect life, totally up in flames." The news should have horrified me. Instead, I felt a strange detachment, as if hearing about characters in a television drama. "What happened?" I asked calmly. According to Zoe's breathless account, Jason Clara's son had moved in with Emily as part of the big happy family plan. He'd turned their home into a party house, inviting friends over for drinking and smoking while Emily was at work. One night, Zoe continued, clearly relishing her role as narrator. One of these idiots dropped a cigarette on a pile of papers in the home office. The whole place went up like kindling. What made the story truly absurd was what happened next. Brian arrived home just as flames began spreading. But instead of calling 911 or trying to save anything, he spotted Jason standing outside and launched into a fistfight right in the street. "Apparently," Zoe said, lowering her voice as if sharing state secrets, "there's been bad blood brewing for weeks. Jason kept making passes at Brian's co-workers at dinner parties. Can you believe it?" The situation deteriorated from there. After the fire, Brian didn't even bother with explanations. He packed what remained of his belongings and moved in with Samantha, Clara's daughter, another betrayal in a chain of betrayals. Emily ran straight to Richard and Clara for help. Zoe continued, "But get this, they shut the door in her face," Clara told her. And I'm quoting from multiple witnesses here. "I only claim Jason and Samantha as my children. As for you, don't even dream about it." I listened as Zoe detailed Emily's complete downfall. The house was underinsured. Her reputation at work was in tatters after missing important meetings due to the crisis. But the cruelest blow came from my granddaughter Lily. Samantha has been showering that child with gifts for months. Zoe explained, designer clothes, the latest gadgets, trips to amusement parks. Now Lily refuses to stay with Emily. She screams for Mom Samantha when Emily tries to take her home. Emily was completely untethered, homeless, husbandless, losing her child, rejected by the real family she'd chosen over me. According to Zoe, she was sleeping on couches, borrowing money, her carefully constructed life demolished in a matter of weeks. Zoe called me nearly every day with updates, treating Emily's collapse like her favorite soap opera. I listened without comment, feeling neither vindication nor sympathy, just a hollow acknowledgement that what goes around truly does come around. "Karma's quite the architect," Deborah commented when I shared the updates with her over dinner. "She builds exactly the house you deserve." One evening, Zoe sent me a video she'd recorded herself. It showed Emily standing outside Richard and Clara's elegant townhouse, her appearance disheveled, knocking desperately on the door. When Richard finally answered, his face was a mask of indifference. No words were exchanged. He simply closed the door in her face as she began to speak, leaving her sobbing on the doorstep, an echo of that rainy day, decades ago, when he'd walked out on us. I watched the video twice, searching for some emotion within myself. Anger, satisfaction, pity. I found none. The woman crying on that doorstep was a stranger to me now. Later that night, as I was preparing for bed, my phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. The message contained just one sentence: "You think you've won. This is only the beginning." I stared at the screen, a chill creeping up my spine. Who was targeting me now? Clara lashing out as her perfect family imploded. Richard blaming me somehow for the chaos. Or someone else entirely moving pieces on a board I couldn't fully see. I placed the phone face down on my nightstand, suddenly aware of my solitude in the small coastal house. For the first time since leaving New York, I checked that all the doors and windows were locked before trying to sleep. The threatening text message left me unsettled for days. I installed a security system, something I'd never needed before. Deborah suggested contacting the police, but what could I tell them? That someone sent me a vague, menacing message, I decided to remain vigilant but not paranoid. Weeks passed without incident. Autumn arrived in Maine, painting the coastline in brilliant hues of red and gold. I'd settled into a comfortable routine, finally feeling at home in my small coastal refuge. Then came that stormy night in late October. Rain lashed against the windows as thunder rolled across the sky. I was curled up with a book when the doorbell rang. Not once, but repeatedly, desperately. It was nearly midnight. Through the security camera I'd installed, I saw a bedraggled figure on my porch hunched against the driving rain. My heart hammered as I recognized Emily. She looked nothing like the polished, confident woman who had dismissed me months ago. Her hair hung in wet strings around her hollow face. Her lips were tinged blue from cold, her eyes red-rimmed and desperate. She clutched a battered suitcase, its contents seemingly thrown together in haste. Cautiously, I opened the door, the security chain still in place. "Mom," she choked out, her voice nearly drowned by the rain. I I have nowhere else to go." A storm of emotions raged within me: anger, pity, vindication, and something dangerously close to maternal concern. I said nothing, just unhooked the chain and stepped aside. A wordless invitation to enter. Emily stumbled in dripping water on the hardwood floor. She stood there looking lost and diminished, the proud daughter who had once called another woman Mom, now couldn't even meet my eyes. "The bathroom's down the hall," I said, finally, my voice neutral. "There are clean towels in the cabinet." Those were the only words we exchanged that night. I showed her to the spare bedroom and left her there. Through the wall, I heard muffled sobs until dawn broke. Days passed in uncomfortable silence. Emily moved through my house like a ghost, careful not to touch anything without permission, eating only what I explicitly offered. She didn't ask for comfort or forgiveness. I didn't offer explanations or accusations. I noticed she never received calls or texts. No one was looking for her. Not Brian, not Lily, not her real family with Clara and Richard. She was truly alone, just as I had been. On the fifth morning, as I prepared coffee in the kitchen, Emily suddenly dropped to her knees beside me. Her shoulders shook with sobs as she clutched at the hem of my robe. "Mom, I was wrong." She wept, her face contorted with grief. "I was so stupid to trust Clara. I don't deserve your kindness." I stood, frozen coffee pot in hand, as years of pent-up truth spilled out of her. Clara had approached Emily 2 years earlier, she confessed. Small interactions at first-chance meetings at coffee shops, sympathetic texts about how difficult I must be to live with Clara, portrayed herself as the caring mother figure who understood Emily's struggles with an overbearing mother. "She promised me everything," Emily said brokenly. "She said Richard wanted to make amends by leaving me their downtown apartment, but only if I became part of their family. She said I'd never have to worry about money again. All the late meetings, all the weekend client emergencies, they were elaborate lies to spend time with Clara and Richard." The mysterious text I'd seen on her phone the morning I left, "Don't forget what I promised you," referred to the apartment Clara had dangled as bait. "After you left, Clara got what she wanted," Emily continued. "She just wanted to hurt you through me. Once you were gone, she had no use for me anymore. She cut me off completely." I set down the coffee pot and looked at my daughter. This broken woman kneeling at my feet, I felt no triumph, no satisfaction in her suffering. "You can stay," I said quietly, "but I won't support you. Find work, pay your way. This isn't a charity." Emily nodded fervently. By that afternoon, she'd found a job as a kitchen helper at a seafood restaurant near the harbor. She came home each night, exhausted hands, raw from work, but never complained. She cooked simple meals, cleaned without being asked, and gave me space when I needed it. I maintained emotional distance, watching her cautiously. The wounds were too deep for quick healing. Weeks passed. I caught a severe cold in November fever, leaving me weak and disoriented. Emily shocked me by staying up through the night, applying cool compresses to my forehead, making homemade soup, adjusting blankets with gentle hands, just as I had done for her in childhood. In her eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen in years, genuine concern without calculation. She wasn't performing care to get something in return. She was simply caring. Still, I kept my guard up. Trust once shattered doesn't mend easily. One evening, passing by Emily's room, I heard her speaking softly on the phone. I paused, not intending to eavesdrop, but caught by the raw emotion in her voice. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "but I can't see you anymore. The mother who truly loved me, I lost her long ago." I froze in the hallway, my heart racing. Who was she talking to? Clara, trying to lure her back? Or someone else entirely? Her next words answered my question. "No, Samantha. I won't let you use me again. Tell your mother I'm done playing her games." I stepped back, silently processing what I'd heard. The pain in Emily's voice wasn't just about betraying me, it was about all she'd lost, including the false family she'd once believed would love her. Winter faded into spring, and Emily's temporary stay gradually evolved into something more permanent, yet distinctly different from before. The shift was subtle, a slow rebuilding of something that wasn't quite trust, but wasn't distrust either. By summer, Emily had saved enough to rent a small apartment just a few blocks from my cottage. She'd been promoted from kitchen helper to cashier and then to assistant manager at the restaurant. I watched her transformation from a distance, the way she walked taller, spoke more directly, and most importantly, stopped looking over her shoulder for approval from others. Gone was the woman who believed a perfect family with Richard and Clara would solve all her problems. In her place stood someone who understood the value of self-reliance. Our relationship shifted too. Emily visited me every weekend, bringing fresh flowers or homemade bread. I no longer met her with cold silence, but I didn't revert to my old self-sacrificing ways either. We maintained a healthy distance, not as mother and daughter bound by obligation, but as two people who had hurt each other deeply and were cautiously learning to respect each other again. I found some of my old pottery from college. I told her one Sunday as we sat on my deck, "I'm thinking of taking classes again." "You should," she replied. "You always loved that I remember the bowls you made when I was little." It was a small moment but significant, acknowledging our shared past without letting it dictate our future. Through Deborah and the ever-gossiping Zoe, I learned the fate of those who had schemed against us. Clara's carefully constructed image crumbled when she was caught embezzling funds from a charity she chaired. Richard faced multiple lawsuits from investors, his assets frozen, his reputation destroyed. Jason landed in legal trouble for dealing drugs, while Samantha was unceremoniously abandoned by Brian, who had moved on to another wealthy target. The perfect family that Emily had sacrificed everything for had disintegrated under the weight of its own corruption. But the most shocking news came via certified mail. One Tuesday morning, a letter from social services identifying me as the only legally eligible relative guardian for Lily Foster. The letter explained that Lily had been placed in temporary state care after both Brian and Samantha had refused custody. Neither wanted the responsibility of raising a child. It seemed Emily's parental rights had been suspended during her period of homelessness and instability. I sat with that letter for days, weighing my options. The easy choice would be to ignore it, to let the social system handle Lily's future. After all, hadn't I already raised one child who had betrayed me? Did I really want to start over at my age? But when I thought of Lily, her innocent smile, her curious eyes, I couldn't abandon her to strangers. This wasn't about Emily or Brian or any of the adults who had failed her. This was about a child who deserved better than she'd been given. When I finally told Emily my decision to seek custody of Lily, she fell silent for a long moment. I don't deserve to be her mother anymore. She finally said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. But thank you, Mom, for still having a heart. I looked at her directly. Don't thank me. Just remember, love isn't something to be exploited a second time. She nodded, understanding the boundaries I was setting. It took 3 months of paperwork and court appearances, but eventually, Lily came to live with me. Emily remained in her apartment nearby, seeing Lily for supervised visits that gradually extended as she proved her stability. We created a new normal, 3 distinct lives that intersected without becoming enmeshed. Lily struggled at first, confused by all the changes and the adults who had let her down, but children are remarkably resilient. As months passed, she began to thrive in the consistent environment I provided. She asked questions about her father, about Samantha, about why her mother lived separately. I answered truthfully but age-appropriately, never vilifying anyone but never sugarcoating reality either. I took up pottery again, my hands remembering the feel of clay even after decades away. Sometimes Lily would sit beside me, making lopsided pinch pots with intense concentration. Occasionally, Deborah would join us for weekend trips, the three of us exploring coastal towns, Lily collecting shells and stories with equal enthusiasm. On a golden autumn afternoon, as I sat at my pottery wheel on the back patio, I heard familiar footsteps approaching Emily, and Lily walked around the side of the house, carrying a small cake between them. I hadn't even realized it was my birthday. I'd been too absorbed in my work. "Happy birthday to the strongest woman we know," Lily announced proudly, pointing to the message written in blue icing. I looked at them both, my daughter and granddaughter, and felt something I hadn't expected: serenity. Not the bitter vindication I might have imagined months ago, not the desperate love that had consumed me for years, just a peaceful acceptance of what was, what had been, and what could be. As I blew out the candles, I didn't make wishes for them as I once would have. Instead, I wished for myself that I would never again lose myself for anyone, that I would remember that my life was my own, to live. The sun was setting over the water, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. I smiled slightly, watching the colors shift and change much like my own life had done. Sometimes, I thought, to find happiness, you have to let go of what you once thought was everything. Neither Emily nor I mentioned Clara, Richard, or the past that day. We didn't need to. We had all learned the hard way that family isn't defined by blood or obligation, but by respect, truth, and the courage to love without losing yourself in the process. And that perhaps was the most valuable lesson of all.